The first mistake the Veltharan made was expecting humanity to kneel. Commander Riker Voss watched through the reinforced viewport of orbital station Prometheus as the massive crystalline ships descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars made manifest. Each vessel stretched nearly 2 kilometers in length, their surfaces pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that hurt to look at directly. The fleet had appeared without warning 3 days ago, materializing from what humanity's best scientists could only describe as folded space. "Transmission incoming on all frequencies," reported Lieutenant Kaya Morgenstern from her communications console. They're speaking every human language simultaneously." The voice that filled the station's command center carried an otherworldly resonance that seemed to vibrate through bone and sinew. "Children of Terra, we are the Veltharan, your shepherds since the dawn of your species. We seeded your world with life, guided your evolution, whispered inspiration to your greatest minds. We are your creators. Your gods returned to reclaim our children." Voss felt his jaw clench. 3 decades of military service had taught him to recognize manipulation when he heard it. "Analysis, Morgenstern. Any truth to their claims?" The lieutenant's fingers danced across her console, pulling up genetic databases and archaeological records. "Sir, they're providing data that seems to corroborate their story. DNA markers that shouldn't exist naturally, mathematical constants embedded in our genetic code, archaeological sites that predate known civilizations by millennia." Dr. Nix Ravencroft, the station's xenobiologist, looked up from her analysis, tablet with narrowed eyes. "The data is convincing, but—" She paused, studying the readouts. "These genetic markers could be artificially inserted. The archaeological evidence could be fabricated. And the mathematical constants. They're beautiful, but they serve no biological purpose. It's almost like someone wanted us to find them." The Veltharan voice continued its sermon. "We have watched as you stumbled through your infancy, as you poisoned your world and warred amongst yourselves. No more. Submit to our guidance, accept our benevolent rule, and we shall elevate you to your rightful place among the stars." Voss studied the fleet positioning data on his tactical display. Despite their claims of benevolence, the Veltharan ships had arranged themselves in a classic orbital blockade formation. Every major population center on Earth sat beneath their weapons range. "Commander," called out Tactical Officer Ezra Nightwind, "I'm reading massive energy buildups in their primary arrays. Whatever those things are designed for, they pack enough power to crack continents." The transmission shifted, the voice taking on a harder edge. "We offer this choice once. Submit willingly, and your species shall be preserved. Resist, and we shall demonstrate the difference between gods and insects." Voss straightened in his command chair, thinking of his daughter playing in the gardens of New Geneva, of his brother farming the restored lands of former Detroit, of the 8 billion souls who had fought their way back from the brink of extinction, through nothing but stubborn human ingenuity. "Open a channel," he commanded. "All frequencies. Planetary broadcast." Morgenstern nodded. "Channel open, sir." Voss stared directly into the primary camera, knowing his words would reach every human settlement from the orbital habitats to the deep ocean colonies. "This is Commander Riker Voss of the United Earth Defense Force. To our uninvited guests, humanity kneels to no one. We've survived ice ages and plagues, nuclear wars and climate collapse. We've pulled ourselves back from extinction more times than most species ever face at once." He leaned forward, his voice carrying the weight of conviction. "You want to see the difference between gods and insects? Then you're about to learn why the species that crawled out of the primordial ooze and reached for the stars has never needed anyone's permission to exist." The Veltharan response came as beams of coherent energy that turned 3 empty mountains into glass. A demonstration of power meant to terrify. Instead, it ignited something far more dangerous: human spite. Within hours of the Veltharan ultimatum, Earth's response began with the kind of chaotic coordination that had defined humanity's greatest triumphs. In hidden bunkers beneath the Antarctic ice, weapons that hadn't seen daylight since the resource wars powered up for the first time in decades. Orbital manufacturing platforms that had spent years building habitats suddenly retooled their assembly lines for military hardware. Admiral Raven Stormwright stood in the war room of Deep Station Alpha, humanity's most classified military installation, buried 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean floor. The holographic displays surrounding her showed a planet mobilizing with desperate efficiency. "Status report," she commanded, her weathered face reflecting the blue glow of tactical projections. Major Orion Steelwind stepped forward, his augmented arm interfacing directly with the command console. "The Veltharan have established energy domes over all major population centers. They're not harming civilians yet, but they're making it clear they could at any moment. Our orbital defense platforms are being systematically disabled by some kind of neural feedback weapon." "What about the underground networks?" Stormwright asked. "That's where it gets interesting," replied Dr. Phoenix Ironheart, the station's chief military scientist. "Their sensors seem designed to detect conventional technology. They're having trouble with our biomechanical systems and quantum-entangled communication networks." The Admiral's eyes sharpened. "Explain." The Veltharan appear to have encountered many species, but always at similar technological development points. They expect metal ships, electromagnetic communications, chemical explosives. They're not prepared for civilizations that merged organic and technological evolution. On the main display, a 3-dimensional map of Earth showed the scattered resistance, nodes still operating. Underwater cities remained undetected, their bioluminescent technology indistinguishable from deep-sea life. The nomadic sky cities, held aloft by genetically modified atmospheric organisms, drifted unnoticed through the upper atmosphere. Most surprisingly, the underground mycelial networks that connected Earth's restored forests were carrying data, faster than light itself, through quantum fungal networks. "Captain." Sage Wildmere materialized on the communication screen from her position aboard the camouflaged vessel Defiance Edge, currently hiding in the asteroid belt. "Admiral, we've been monitoring Veltharan communications. They're confused. Their standard intimidation protocols assume centralized government structures, unified military commands, predictable response patterns. And instead they found us," Stormwright said with grim satisfaction. "A species that spent centuries perfecting the art of asymmetrical warfare against superior forces." Major Steelwind pulled up intercepted alien communications. "They're calling us chaotic and unpredictable. Their tactical algorithms can't process our response patterns because we don't have response patterns. Every human settlement is reacting independently while somehow coordinating through networks they can't detect or understand." Dr. Ironheart's console chimed with an urgent priority message. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from resistance cells worldwide. The Veltharan have been visiting other worlds, always with the same story about being creator gods, but we've found inconsistencies in their historical claims. Archaeological sites they claim to have influenced show clear signs of recent modification." "Fraud?" Stormwright asked. "Sophisticated fraud. They arrive at civilizations reaching spaceflight capability, claim to be ancient gods returning, provide fabricated evidence, then offer protection in exchange for submission. Species that accept become something else. Docile. Dependent. Their technological advancement stops. Their population growth becomes regulated. Their creativity dies." The Admiral studied the tactical display showing Veltharan ships maintaining their threatening positions above Earth's cities. "How many species have they collected?" "Based on fragmentary data we've intercepted, at least 47. All now serving as specialized worker castes in their empire. Engineers, soldiers, administrators, even entertainment specialists. Each species filling a specific role in their galactic civilization." Captain Wildmere's image flickered as she maneuvered through the asteroid field. The question is, what role were they planning for humanity? Dr. Ironheart's expression darkened. Based on their psychological profiles of our species, I believe they intended us to be their warriors, our adaptability, our aggression, our refusal to surrender even in hopeless situations. They wanted to harness human ferocity for their imperial expansion. Admiral Stormwright felt a cold smile cross her face. Then they're about to discover why that was a catastrophically poor decision. Status on Project Prometheus? Ready for implementation, Admiral. Though I should warn you, once we begin, there's no taking it back. We'll be committing humanity to a path that leads either to victory or extinction. The Admiral looked at the faces surrounding her, seeing the same determination she felt reflected in their eyes. Humanity had always been the species that chose extinction over submission. Initialize Project Prometheus. Show these false gods what happens when they threaten a species that earned its survival through 4 billion years of unguided evolution. Across Earth, in hidden installations and secret laboratories, ancient human instincts merged with cutting-edge technology. The prey was about to become the predator. The Veltharan had made their second critical error. They assumed humans thought like every other species they had conquered. Logical, predictable, focused on self-preservation above all else. Dr. Ember Nightfall watched the final preparations for Project Prometheus from the control center of Facility Omega, built inside a hollowed-out asteroid that had been secretly relocated to Earth's L4 Lagrange point. Around her, technicians made last-minute adjustments to humanity's most desperate and brilliant gamble. "Final systems check," she announced, her voice carrying across the secured channel to resistance cells worldwide. Biological integration at 97%, quantum entanglement network stable, psionic amplification arrays powered and ready. The project was insane by any rational measure. Faced with technologically superior invaders, humanity had chosen to abandon technology entirely and instead evolve. In the 72 hours since the Veltharan arrival, every human on Earth had been infected with a carefully designed retrovirus that activated dormant genetic sequences buried in human DNA for millions of years. The sequences weren't natural. They were older than that, remnants of humanity's actual evolutionary history that told a very different story than what the Veltharan claimed. Captain Thorne Shadowbane reported in from his position in the Australian outback. "Dr. Nightfall, we're seeing successful activation across all test subjects. Enhanced reflexes, increased cognitive processing, improved cellular regeneration. But the psychological changes are exactly what we expected," Nightfall replied. "The virus isn't just activating physical enhancements. It's removing the psychological barriers that civilized society installed to suppress our predator instincts." On her screens, she watched real-time biological data from volunteers across the globe. Heart rates dropping to hibernation levels, brain activity shifting into patterns never before recorded in Homo sapiens, muscle density increasing as bone structure reinforced itself. Most dramatically, electromagnetic sensitivity spiking to levels that would allow humans to interface directly with electronic systems. But the most important change was invisible to sensors, the gradual awakening of humanity's collective consciousness. "Veltharan. Fleet is moving," reported Lieutenant Vale Stormcrow from her position aboard a cloaked reconnaissance vessel. "They're descending to lower orbital positions. It looks like they're preparing for a demonstration of force." Dr. Nightfall nodded. Grimly, the aliens had grown impatient with humanity's lack of submission. Time for the final phase. "All stations, initiate Prometheus protocol, release the activation signal. Across Earth, hidden transmitters broadcast a specific quantum frequency that resonated with the modified neural networks of every infected human." The change was instantaneous and irreversible. In New Geneva, Secretary General Aspen Steelborn felt her consciousness expand beyond the confines of her skull, suddenly aware of every human within a 50-kilometer radius. Their thoughts, fears, and determination flowed through her like rivers joining an ocean. In the deep ocean research stations, marine biologist River Goldwind watched as the dolphins and whales began exhibiting strange behavior, their biosonar, creating complex patterns that matched the quantum signatures of human neural activity. The planet's marine life was responding to humanity's transformation. In Earth's restored forests, the vast mycelial networks that had spent decades reconnecting damaged ecosystems suddenly blazed with activity as they became conduits for human consciousness itself. The Veltharon noticed the change immediately. Subjects exhibiting anomalous behavior, their communications intercepted and decoded by human listeners whose enhanced minds could now process their alien language in real time. Bioelectromagnetic signatures shifting outside acceptable parameters. Recommend immediate harvesting protocol. But it was already too late. The first Veltharon ship to descend toward a population center, targeting London for what they intended as an object lesson, found itself facing something unprecedented in their thousands of years of conquest. As their energy weapons charged, the 8 million humans in the metropolitan area acted as a single organism. Every piece of metal in the city became a conductor. Every electronic device became a weapon. Every human became a node in a vast biological computer that calculated the ship's exact vulnerabilities in microseconds and exploited them with surgical precision. The Veltharan vessel, designed to withstand conventional weapons and energy attacks, had no defense against a coordinated electromagnetic pulse generated by 8 million human brains working in perfect synchronization. Its systems overloaded, its artificial gravity failed, and it crashed into the Thames with a splash that could be felt across 3 continents. From her command center, Dr. Nightfall watched as similar scenarios played out across the globe. The Veltharan fleet, which had seemed invincible hours before, was being systematically brought down by a species that had just abandoned individual consciousness in favor of something far more dangerous. Phase 1 complete, she announced to the Global Resistance Network. We've shown them we can hurt them. Now we show them why they should have left us alone. The transformation was far from over. Humanity had spent 3 days learning to fight, like a civilization. Now they would learn to hunt like a species. The Veltharan had ruled the galaxy for 3 millennia by understanding a simple principle. Every species had a breaking point. Apply enough pressure, demonstrate sufficient superiority, and even the most stubborn civilization would submit rather than face extinction. They had never encountered a species whose breaking point was the moment they became truly dangerous. Colonel Asher Moonwright crouched in the ruins of what had been London, his enhanced senses picking up the electromagnetic signatures of Veltharan survivors as they attempted to escape their crashed vessel. Around him, a dozen other humans moved with predatory grace through the twisted metal, their movements coordinated without a word being spoken. The collective consciousness wasn't a hive mind. Humanity's stubborn individualism had proven too strong for that. Instead, it was something far more terrifying, a pack intelligence. Each human retained their personality, their memories, their individual skills, but now they could share tactical information, emotional states, and strategic planning through direct neural connection. 3 survivors, Northwest Section, he whispered, though the information was already flowing through the local network to every human within 50 kilometers. They're trying to activate some kind of beacon. Through the shared consciousness, he felt the response of his packmates. Marine Sergeant River Ironwing would circle from the east. Combat Engineer Sage Blackfire would disable their technology from below. Dr. Quinn Nighthaven would monitor their biological responses to ensure they were captured alive for interrogation. The Veltharan had made their 3rd critical error. They assumed humans would fight like humans. Instead, humanity had embraced something older, something that predated civilization by millions of years. From orbit, the remaining Veltharan fleet watched in growing panic as similar scenes played out across Earth. Their forces weren't just being defeated, they were being hunted by coordinated packs of enhanced humans who seemed to anticipate every tactical decision before it was made. High Commander Veltar Sunweaver struggled to understand the tactical reports flooding his command center. How are they predicting our movements with such accuracy? His tactical analyst, a member of the conquered Kithani species, trembled as he replied. High Commander, they appear to be sharing sensory information across vast distances instantaneously. When we engage one group, somehow every other group immediately knows our capabilities, our weapon signatures, our tactical preferences. On the main display, Earth showed a disturbing pattern. The electromagnetic signatures of human neural activity were connecting across continents through the planet's natural magnetic field. The entire species was becoming a single, vast, nervous system with 8 billion individual processors. Impossible! Veltar hissed. No species develops collective consciousness this rapidly. Such evolution takes millions of years. What he didn't understand was that humanity hadn't developed collective consciousness at all. They had weaponized it. Back on Earth's surface, Captain Nova Stormheart led a pack of 50 humans through the Australian outback toward a crashed Veltharan reconnaissance ship. Through the shared awareness, she could feel the fear radiating from the alien survivors as they detected the approaching humans. The fear was justified. The genetic modifications hadn't just enhanced human physical capabilities, they had removed the evolutionary safeguards that prevented humans from becoming apex predators. Millennia of civilization had taught humanity to suppress their hunting instincts, to cooperate rather than compete, to show mercy to defeated enemies. Those lessons were being rapidly unlearned. They're broadcasting a surrender signal, reported one of her packmates, the information flowing directly into Nova's consciousness. Standard galactic protocols for prisoner status. Galactic protocols, Nova replied, her enhanced vocal cords carrying harmonics that resonated with her pack's shared emotional state. Assume the conquerors follow galactic rules. The pack descended on the crash site like a living storm. The Veltharan, despite their advanced technology and superior individual capabilities, found themselves facing something they had never encountered, a species that had learned to fight as a single organism while retaining the unpredictability of 8 billion individual minds. The aliens' energy weapons, designed to incapacitate individual targets, proved useless against attackers who could instantly adapt their tactics based on shared experience from every previous engagement. Their defensive shields couldn't compensate for attacks coming simultaneously from directions their tactical computers couldn't predict. Most terrifyingly, the humans weren't just defeating them, they were learning from them. Each captured piece of Veltharan technology was instantly reverse-engineered by the collective intelligence of every human scientist, engineer, and inventor on the planet working in parallel. By the end of the 4th day, humanity had not only adapted to Veltharan weapons and defenses, but had begun improving upon them. The species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of warfare was now turning those skills towards something far more ambitious than mere survival. They were preparing to hunt the hunters across the stars. From his flagship in high orbit, High Commander Veltar made the decision that would doom his species. Rather than withdraw and report humanity as unsuitable for conquest, he chose to call for reinforcements. Humanity was about to learn that they weren't the only species the Veltharan had collected, and the Veltharan were about to learn why Earth had always been considered the galaxy's most dangerous breeding ground for apex predators. The pack was awake, the pack was hungry, and the pack had just caught the scent of larger prey. The arrival of the Veltharan reinforcement fleet should have marked the end of human resistance. 47 ships, each carrying the specialized warrior castes of conquered species, dropped out of hyperspace with enough firepower to sterilize Earth's biosphere 3 times over. Instead, they found a planet that no longer existed in any recognizable form. Admiral Zara Swiftwind stood on the bridge of humanity's first interstellar vessel, an impossible fusion of captured Veltharan technology and biological engineering that grew rather than being built. The ship itself was alive. Its neural networks interfaced directly with her enhanced consciousness and those of her crew. "Scanners are having difficulty processing what they're seeing," reported Navigation Officer Kai Dreamwalker, his augmented eyes interfacing directly with the ship's sensory apparatus. "Earth's electromagnetic signature has changed. The planet is thinking." Through the shared consciousness that now connected every human in the solar system, Zara could perceive the transformation directly. Earth had become humanity's extended nervous system. The mycelial networks in the forests, the neural pathways of marine life, even the planet's magnetic field itself had been conscripted into a vast biological computer network with processing power that dwarfed any artificial intelligence ever conceived. "Status of the surface populations?" she asked, though she already knew the answer through the collective awareness. "All civilians successfully integrated into the Planetary Defense Network," reported Chief Engineer River Nightblade. "Population centers have been converted into distributed neural nodes. The distinction between human habitation and planetary ecosystem no longer applies. The Veltharan reinforcement fleet established orbit and began their standard intimidation broadcast. High Commander Veltar had briefed them on the unusual resistance they had encountered, but 47 species of specialized warriors backed by overwhelming technological superiority should have been more than sufficient to handle one primitive world. They were about to discover why Earth had been the only planet in the galaxy to independently develop faster-than-light travel. The first wave of Veltharan assault craft descended toward what their sensors identified as military installations. Instead, they found themselves flying into carefully orchestrated traps that had been planned by 8 billion human minds working in perfect coordination. The atmosphere itself became weaponized. Engineered atmospheric organisms created pockets of altered pressure and electromagnetic disturbance that disabled Veltharan propulsion systems. The planet's magnetic field, now under direct human control, generated focused electromagnetic pulses that overloaded alien electronics. Most terrifyingly, the humans had learned to reproduce Veltharan biotechnology and improve it. Captain Storm Wildfire led a squadron of hybrid fighter craft that looked more like living creatures than military vessels. Their hulls rippled with adaptive camouflage that made them nearly invisible to Veltharan sensors. Their weapons systems fired projectiles that were essentially directed evolution, viruses designed to adapt to and overcome any defensive system they encountered. "First contact with Veltharan air support," she reported through the neural link. "Their pilots are good, but they're thinking like individuals." The engagement that followed redefined space combat. The Veltharan pilots, each highly trained, members of species bred for warfare, found themselves outmaneuvered by human fighters that moved with the coordination of a school of fish or a flock of birds. Every evasive maneuver was anticipated. Every tactical decision was countered before it was fully implemented. But the real revelation came when the first Veltharan warriors reached Earth's surface. The Krillian shock troops, genetically modified, descendants of a species that had once conquered 3 star systems before falling to the Veltharan, expected to face human soldiers in conventional combat. Instead, they found themselves in a landscape that fought back, trees that bent to provide cover for human defenders while their root systems delivered tactical information through underground networks, grass that released spores designed to interfere with alien respiratory systems. Even the soil itself had been modified to detect the electromagnetic signatures of Veltharan equipment and respond with targeted biological attacks. The humans, they Did encounter moved like apex predators who had spent their entire evolutionary history learning to hunt in packs. But these weren't the humans the Krillians had been briefed on. These were something new, something that used tools and technology as extensions of their biological capabilities rather than replacements for them. Major Ember Stormwright coordinated the defense of the former European sector through direct interface with the Continental Neural Network. Through the shared consciousness, she could perceive every alien intruder as a disruption in the planet's own awareness. Krillian forces advancing on Grid 7, she reported, though the information was already being processed by every human defender across the continent. Recommend implementation of Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega was humanity's answer to the Eoking question of what happened when a species known for its adaptability had access to the genetic templates of 47 other civilizations. The humans who rose to meet the Krillian assault no longer looked entirely human. Generations of genetic modification compressed into hours had given them features adapted for specific combat roles: enhanced bone density from the Taraxi Mountain warriors, electromagnetic sensitivity from the Korthak deep space dwellers, regenerative capabilities from the Vindari healing caste, but they retained the one characteristic that made humans unique among galactic species. They refused to be anything other than themselves. The battle for Earth lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Veltheran reinforcement fleet was either destroyed or captured, and humanity had gained access to the genetic and technological legacy of nearly 50 conquered civilizations. More importantly, they had learned the location of the Veltheran homeworld. Admiral Swiftwind stood on the bridge of her living ship as it prepared for humanity's first interstellar military expedition. Around her, the crew made final preparations for a journey that would either establish humanity as a galactic power or result in their complete extinction. Navigation plot confirmed, reported Officer Dreamwalker. Estimated travel time to Veltheran Prime, 14 days. Message from the Planetary Council, added communications specialist Rain Shadowmere. Full authorization for Operation Prometheus, final. All human colonies, orbital habitats, and deep space installations are now connected to the collective network. If we fail, the species continues. If we succeed, Admiral Swiftwind said, feeling the anticipation of 8 billion humans through the neural link. We teach the galaxy that some species are too dangerous to cage. The living ship began its transformation for interstellar flight, its bioengineered systems drawing power from the same quantum fields that had once seemed like magic to human scientists. In the cargo holds, thousands of human warriors prepared for a battle that would determine whether humanity would take its place among the stars as conquerors or victims. The pack was going hunting, and their prey had no idea what was coming for them. The Veltheran homeworld had never been attacked. In 3,000 years of galactic conquest, no species had ever possessed the audacity, the capability, or the sheer vindictive determination to bring war to the heart of their empire. They were about to learn why humanity had been considered too dangerous to evolve naturally. Admiral Zara Swiftwind materialized on the bridge of the Living Vengeance as it dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Veltheran system. What they found defied every tactical assumption about defensive positioning she had ever learned. The homeworld sat at the center of a vast spherical formation of orbital stations, each one housing millions of beings from the conquered species. Manufacturing centers, research facilities, administrative complexes, all staffed by the 47 civilizations that had submitted to Veltheran rule over the millennia. It's not a planet, whispered Navigator Kai Dreamwalker, his enhanced perception processing the impossible scope of what they were seeing. It's a galaxy-spanning civilization compressed into a single solar system. Through the collective consciousness, every human in the task force could perceive the system's layout simultaneously. 17 billion beings living in perfect, sterile harmony. each species performing their assigned function with clockwork precision. No conflict, no dissent, no individual ambition that might disrupt the greater order. "It's beautiful," reported xenobiologist Nova Starweaver from her analysis station, "and absolutely horrifying. They've turned 47 civilizations into organic components of a vast machine." Captain Storm Ironheart, commanding the assault vessel Predator's Edge, studied the defensive formations through the shared tactical network. Standard defensive positions would put their primary weapons platforms here, here, and here. But they're not in standard positions because they've never needed to defend, Admiral Swiftwind realized. They've been the apex predator for so long they've forgotten what it means to be prey. The first phase of the human assault began not with weapons, but with something far more dangerous: ideas. Dr. Phoenix Ravencroft activated the psychological warfare protocols that had been developed during humanity's darkest hours. Using captured Veltharan communication systems, the human fleet began broadcasting a simple message to every being in the system. You were not born to serve. You had names before they gave you numbers. You had dreams before they gave you functions. You had choices before they gave you chains. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Across 17 orbital installations, beings who had lived their entire lives in content servitude suddenly remembered what it felt like to want something for themselves. Production facilities ground to a halt as workers stopped to contemplate questions they had never been allowed to ask. The Veltharan response was swift and predictable. Emergency suppression protocols activated across the system, attempting to restore order through the same neural conditioning that had maintained their empire for millennia. But humanity had learned something important about the Veltharan during their brief occupation of Earth. Their control systems were designed for willing subjects. Species that had chosen submission, however reluctantly, could be maintained through psychological manipulation and subtle neural influence. The rebellions that erupted across the orbital stations weren't willing subjects. They were 47 civilizations simultaneously remembering who they used to be. "System-wide uprising confirmed," reported Tactical Officer River Nightwind. "Veltharan forces are engaging their own slave populations. Their defensive fleet is being pulled in 17 different directions." Admiral Swiftwind felt the predatory satisfaction of 8 billion humans through the collective consciousness. The pack had found the weakness in their prey. "All ships, advance to engagement range. Target their command and control networks. Let's see how well they fight when they can't coordinate their response." The battle that followed wasn't warfare in any conventional sense. It was an apex predator, demonstrating to a former apex predator exactly how far they had fallen in the food chain. The Veltharan fleet, despite their superior numbers and technology, found themselves fighting an enemy that adapted faster than their tactical computers could process. Every weapon system they deployed was immediately countered by human technology that improved in real time through the collective intelligence of every human engineer, scientist, and warrior in the task force. But the real devastation came from humanity's psychological warfare capabilities. Captain Ember Stormclaw led the boarding action against the primary Veltharan command station. Her assault team moved through the alien corridors like a force of nature, but their most devastating weapon wasn't their enhanced capabilities or advanced armor. It was their absolute refusal to be anything other than what they chose to be. The Veltharan had conquered 47 species by offering them a simple trade, security and prosperity in exchange for freedom and individual identity. Every species they had encountered had eventually accepted this bargain, finding comfort in being told what to do, what to think, what to aspire to become. Humanity's response to this offer had been to evolve beyond the reach of any external control. "Hi, Commander Veltar," Captain Stormclaw said as her team secured the command center. "You made a critical error in your assessment of our species. The Veltharan leader, ancient beyond human comprehension and accustomed to being revered as a living god, found himself facing something unprecedented, a being that looked at him with complete indifference to his supposed divinity. "Impossible," he whispered. "Every species seeks guidance. Every civilization craves order. Without our oversight, you will destroy yourselves." "Maybe," Stormclaw replied, removing her helmet to reveal features that had been modified by controlled evolution to intimidate rather than comfort. "But we'll do it as ourselves. That's what you never understood about humanity. We'd rather die. Free than live as slaves, even comfortable ones." Through the neural link, she felt the satisfaction of the entire human fleet as Veltharan defensive systems throughout the system began shutting down, not because they had been destroyed, but because the beings operating them were choosing to stop. "The offer you made to our species," Stormclaw continued, "security in exchange for freedom, prosperity in exchange for identity, we're going to make the same offer to yours, except in reverse." Admiral Swiftwind's voice carried across the system, through commandeered Veltharan communication networks, reaching every being in the 17 orbital stations. "Citizens of the former Veltharan Empire, humanity offers you a choice. Join us in freedom, with all the chaos and uncertainty that entails, or remain in the comfortable cages you've known." The response shattered 3 millennia of galactic order. Species that had been content as specialized worker castes began demanding the right to explore other possibilities. Beings who had lived their entire lives following predetermined paths started making their own decisions. The vast machine of the Veltharan Empire began to dissolve as its components remembered how to be individuals rather than functions. But humanity's greatest victory wasn't the conquest of the Veltharan homeworld. It was the moment when Commander Veltar, faced with the collapse of everything he had built, made a choice of his own. "What have you done to us?" he asked, his voice carrying a note of something the Veltharan hadn't experienced in millennia. "Uncertainty. We've given you back your freedom," Captain Stormclaw replied. "The question is, what are you going to do with it?" For the first time in 3,000 years, a Veltharan didn't know the answer. 6 months after the fall of the Veltharan Empire, the galaxy was learning a hard truth. Freedom was far more difficult than slavery, but infinitely more rewarding. Admiral Zara Swiftwind stood on the observation deck of New Prometheus, the first jointly constructed vessel of what was becoming, known as the Free Species Alliance. Around her, beings from dozens of civilizations worked together, not because they were forced to, but because they had chosen to. The sight still amazed her. A Krillian engineer working alongside a human technician, sharing ideas that neither species could have developed alone. A Taraxi artist collaborating with a Korthak musician to create art forms that had never existed before the barriers between species had been broken down. "Status report from the outer colonies," announced Communications Officer Rain Shadowmere, her neural implants interfacing directly with the quantum communication network that now connected liberated worlds across the galaxy. 17 systems have requested admission to the Alliance," she continued. "But we're also getting reports of conflict in the former Veltharan industrial sectors. Some species are having difficulty adapting to self-governance after millennia of external control. It was the challenge humanity had anticipated. Breaking chains was easier than learning to walk without them. Captain Nova Starweaver materialized through the ship's biotransport system, her features showing the stress of coordinating relief efforts across multiple star systems. "The Vindari are struggling with the concept of individual choice. They keep asking us what they should want. The Kithani have split into 7 different factions, each claiming to represent their species' true interests." Admiral Swiftwind nodded grimly. "And the Veltharan themselves?" "That's complicated," Starweaver replied. "High Commander Veltar has been working with our xenopsychologists. Turns out the Veltharan were once as individualistic as any species. They created their empire not out of malice, but out of genuine belief that order was preferable to chaos. They'd forgotten what it was like to be uncertain, to struggle, to grow. Through the neural link that still connected humanity across the galaxy, Swiftwind could feel the mixed emotions of her species. Pride at what they had accomplished, but also a growing understanding of the magnitude of responsibility they had taken on. "Admiral," interrupted Tactical Officer Sage Windrunner, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. It's from High Commander Veltar." The former ruler of the galaxy's greatest empire appeared on the main display, but he was almost unrecognizable from the being who had once threatened to treat humanity like insects. His features showed something that would have been impossible 6 months ago: doubt, curiosity, and the beginnings of what humans might call hope. "Admiral Swiftwind," he began, his voice carrying harmonics that human ears could now detect thanks to their genetic modifications. "I have a request to make, not as a commander, not as a representative of my species, but as an individual making a choice." Swiftwind felt the attention of the entire Alliance focus on this moment. "Go ahead, Veltar. I want to learn. For 3,000 years, I knew everything, or thought I did. I knew the proper role of every species, the correct structure of galactic civilization, the right way to maintain order. But I've spent these months working with your people, seeing what you've built from chaos, and I realize I know nothing about the most important thing of all, which is how to live without certainty, how to make decisions without knowing if they're correct, how to be responsible for my own choices rather than following predetermined paths." Veltar paused, and for the first time in recorded history, a Veltharan asked rather than commanded. "Will you teach me?" Admiral Swiftwind felt the collective consideration of 8 billion human minds, and their unanimous response surprised even her. Not suspicion, not vindictiveness, but something uniquely human, the desire to help someone learn to be free. "We'll do better than that," she replied. "We'll learn together." The transmission ended, but its implications rippled across the galaxy. If the Veltharan, the species that had once claimed to be gods, could learn to embrace uncertainty and choice, perhaps there was hope for all the others struggling with their newfound freedom. Dr. Phoenix Ravencroft entered the observation deck, her research tablet displaying data that would have been impossible to collect under the old order. "Admiral, we've completed our analysis of the genetic modifications the Veltharan made to their subject species. The good news is that most of the changes can be reversed if the species choose to return to their original forms. And the bad news? Some species don't want to return. The Krillians, for instance, have decided they like their enhanced combat capabilities. The Korthak want to keep their electromagnetic sensitivity. They're choosing to remain modified, but now they're modifying themselves according to their own desires rather than external requirements." Swiftwind smiled. "That's not bad news, Doctor. That's evolution. There's something else. The neural networks we developed during the war, the collective consciousness protocols, they're spreading, not just among humans, but among any species that wants to join the shared awareness. We're seeing voluntary adoption of enhanced communication and coordination abilities across dozens of civilizations. Voluntary being the key word," Swiftwind noted. "No one is being forced to join the network, and anyone can leave at any time." "Exactly. Which brings me to the most interesting development. The galaxy is becoming something unprecedented, a truly cooperative civilization. Not enforced cooperation like the Veltharan Empire, but voluntary collaboration between species that choose to work together because they've discovered they're stronger that way." As if summoned by their conversation, Captain Storm Ironheart appeared on the communication screen from her position at the edge of the galaxy. "Admiral, we've made contact with 3 previously unknown civilizations in the Outer Rim. They want to know if the stories they've heard are true, that there's a part of the galaxy where species are free to choose their own paths." "What did you tell them?" that they're welcome to come see for themselves. No obligations, no requirements for membership, no demands for submission. Just an invitation to join a community of beings who've decided that freedom is worth the uncertainty it brings. Admiral Swiftwind looked out at the stars, no longer seeing them as points of light in the darkness, but as homes for billions of beings who were learning, for the first time in millennia, what it meant to choose their own destinies. "Status of the human colonies?" she asked. "Thriving," replied Officer Shadowmere. "The modifications we made during the war are stabilizing. The collective consciousness has evolved into something more like an enhanced communication network. We're still individuals, but we can share thoughts and experiences when we choose to." And the birth rate? Exploding. Apparently, the combination of genetic enhancement and unlimited potential for growth has made humans very optimistic about the future. "We're projecting a population of 12 billion within the next decade." Swiftwind felt a deep satisfaction flow through the neural link from every human in the galaxy. They had not just survived the Veltheron threat, they had transcended it. They had taken the challenge of godlike beings claiming dominion over them, and transformed it into an opportunity to become something greater than they had ever imagined. "Admiral," called out Navigation Officer Dreamwalker, "we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Core. It's from species we've never encountered before. They're asking if humanity would be willing to serve as mediators in a territorial dispute." Mediators? They've heard about what happened with the Veltharan Empire. They want to know if we can help them find a solution that doesn't involve conquest or submission. Admiral Swiftwind felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders, but also the strength of 8 billion humans and dozens of allied species ready to help carry that burden. "Tell them we'll consider it," she said, "but make it clear that we don't impose solutions. We just help people find their own." As the new Prometheus adjusted course toward the Galactic Core, Admiral Swiftwind reflected on the irony of their situation. The Veltharan had tried to make humanity into their warriors, their tools of conquest. Instead, humanity had become something far more dangerous to tyrants and far more valuable to the galaxy, a species that helped others learn to be free. The false gods had claimed to offer order and security in exchange for submission. Humanity had shown the galaxy something better, the chaos and uncertainty of freedom, with all its risks and infinite possibilities. In the end, the Veltharan had been right about one thing. Humanity was perfectly suited to be the galaxy's warriors. They just hadn't understood what humanity would choose to fight for. Not conquest, not dominion, not the imposition of order on chaos, but for the right of every being in the galaxy to make their own choices, to face their own challenges, to grow through their own struggles, and to become whatever they had the courage to choose to be. The pack had found its purpose, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the years that followed, historians would mark the fall of the Veltharan Empire as the moment the galaxy learned to choose. But for those who lived through it, it was simpler than that. It was the day that freedom proved stronger than any cage, no matter how comfortable or secure. Humanity had shown the galaxy that some things were worth fighting for, even against impossible odds. And the most important thing of all was the right to be wrong, to struggle, to fail, and to try again. Because in the end, that's what it meant to be truly alive.